First is a 2003 article from the American Journal of Physical Anthropology written by Dario Maestri-Pieri and Stephen R. Ross. It analyzes the play behaviors of infant western lowland gorillas. Specifically, their study looks at sex differences in play patterns and the implications these have for adult behavior and social structure. The study aims to answer several questions. What is the significance of play in infant gorillas? How does it differ between males and females? How does play change throughout adolescence? Most importantly, the study sought to analyze how the behavior of infants might prepare them for the behaviors they will follow in adulthood. What are the implications of childhood play for the lives and habits of adult gorillas? There are two hypotheses that are given in the study. The first is the motor training hypothesis, which states that gorilla infants will engage in play styles that reflect the motor skills they use most often in adulthood. Therefore, male gorillas, who need physical strength, would more likely prefer to play with other male infants who provide better practice. The second hypothesis is the social relationship hypothesis, which states that infants engage in play as a way to practice the social skills they need to use in adulthood. For instance, females would want to play with males over females because their relationship with the dominant male in adulthood is more important than their relationships with other females within their groups. The study aims to further analyze these connections between play in infancy and adulthood behaviors. The study consisted of 12 captive gorilla infants being observed weekly over a period of 22 months. In 60-minute sessions, the style and frequency of play, as well as the sex and preferred play partners for each infant, were recorded. Other play-related behaviors were also observed, such as play faces, initiation of social play, and mock biting. There were three defined types of play that were noted: solitary locomotor play, solitary object play, and social play. The study found that social play was the most prevalent and solitary locomotor play was the least. Over the first 2 years of the gorillas' lives, all three types of play were shown to increase. Solitary locomotor play frequency decreased steadily after the second year. Social play and solitary object play continued to increase into the third year and then began to decline. Males played more often than females for all three types of play and showed more play-related activities. Both sexes were more likely to initiate play with males than females, with females initiating play with other females being the least likely occurrence. In addition, all gorilla infants are most likely to engage in play behaviors with other infants of their same age. However, male infants were seen initiating play with adult females other than their own mothers. Females did not display such behaviors. Very rarely did any of the infants attempt to play with the dominant male silverback, and in all such cases, it was initiated by a male infant. The results confirm the hypotheses put forth. Their play is found to be indicative of adulthood behaviors, especially within their social structures. Males played more often than females and with other males, as they are more dominant in adulthood and require more physical capability to protect their harems. Females rarely engaged in play with other females, which reflects the lack of significance that female-female relationships hold within their social structure. Rather, they most commonly prefer to engage in play with male infants, fostering the competency to interact with their mates in adulthood. The decline in frequency of play in the later years of infancy reflects the shift of infants' attention to other activities as they near adulthood, the role of play having been fulfilled. Other great ape species, such as chimpanzees, have also reflected these findings. However, more research on female-dominant social structures is needed to fully understand the connection between play in infancy and adulthood social structures. The results provided in this study, however, cannot answer questions such as whether play behaviors are instinctive or learned through observation. It does provide some insight into the general meaning and purpose of childhood play for many species, including humans. This possibly could lead to future studies observing how human play patterns reflect adulthood gender roles, as humans are known to be genetically similar to great apes.
My research article is about the evolutionary advantage of having a long neck in giraffes. The researchers questioned why giraffes have long necks and what is the evolutionary advantage of having it. Why does this trait keep getting passed on to the next generation? Besides that, giraffes have long necks either for feeding competition purposes or to thrive over competitors in sexual combat. They predicted that the long necks of giraffes did not evolve because of the selective pressure of feeding at higher levels, but instead as a sexually dominant trait in intrasexual combat. Some background information is that giraffes during dry season feed from low shrubs when they should be feeding from high shrubs because the feeding competition is high. And female giraffes spend 50% of the time feeding horizontal, and both females and males feed faster and more often with their necks bent. If the feeding competition was the selective pressure driving giraffes' necks to get longer, autonomically other body parts should have elongated. Researchers' objective was to figure out the evolutionary advantage of this trait, and they did this by compiling data from various organizations and comparing neck mass and length in females and male giraffes and okapi. The researchers collected data on neck mass, neck length, leg length, and horn length of females and male giraffes and okapi from various zoos. Okapi data was used to generate scaling components of leg to neck length, which is to compare with giraffe leg to neck ratios to understand how giraffes have evolved morphologically. In another study, the researchers dissected giraffes and massed just the neck. They also checked the shoulder height and horn proportion. They plotted head and neck mass against age to investigate relative sexual differences in these organs. They also plotted the neck mass against the body mass for these males and females to determine if the male necks were positively allometric. The results of the study showed that both sexes frequently fed at or below shoulder height, which is negative 3.1 meters and 2.8 meters for adult males and females. Females in female groups fed most frequently at 1.5 meters. Females in male groups fed most frequently at 2.5 meters, and males in male groups fed at about 3 meters. Only dominant males in female groups fed at a height of 5 meters, close to the expected of an animal of this height. The ratio of okapi's foreleg to neck is approximately 1 to 0.44 meters. For giraffes, the ratio is about 1 to 0.93 meters. Scaling suggested that necks of female giraffes are about 35 centimeters shorter than those of males, which does not support the interspecific feeding competition hypothesis. Fossils provided evidence that disproportionate growth in leg and neck length and relatively short, stout horns suggesting both a different mode of fighting and intense selection on necks. This data is from the dissections the researchers conducted, and it shows that males and females, each weighing 800 kilograms, had the respective head masses of 20.3 kilograms and 18 kilograms, even though the males of this mass would be at least 2 years younger. The neck masses of males and females weighing 800 kilograms would be 60 kilograms and 51 kilograms, respectively. So, this data suggests that both age and body mass related results for head size and neck size are compatible. The idea that male attributes have undergone selection for increased size and strength. Researchers concluded that their prediction was more accurate in the sense that the long neck of giraffes arrives from sexual competition via natural selection rather than feeding competition via natural selection. So their prediction was supported, but the hypothesis about feeding competition was rejected. The data shows competitive interactions from the relative heights of extinct giraffes and the present-day feeding stratifications among the sympatric browsers. The researchers concluded that there isn't enough evidence to support the hypothesis about feeding competition, and males also have larger necks and heads than females of the same body mass. Therefore, there is good evidence that necks are maintained by sexual selection. But neither hypothesis directly explains long-necked females. Researchers don't go in depth about why this trait is passed on from generation to generation. This research provides a different answer to the evolutionary biology of giraffes and also provokes further questioning. Speaking of animals. Let's look at farm animals.
My research article is about Giardia and Cryptosporidium in Canadian farm animals. Giardia is pictured on the left and Cryptosporidium is pictured on the right. These are parasites. This research was published in Veterinary Parasitology. They investigated whether or not these parasites are present in Canadian farm livestock and what effects the presence of these parasites have, especially in cattle, sheep, pigs, and horses in farms in different geographical areas. Their hypothesis was if different animals have different pathogen presences, Canadian farm livestock will also have different presences of pathogens. Their prediction was that if Canadian farm livestock are located in different areas, there will be pathogens present. These parasites are common pathogens in humans and animals and are the main cause of diarrhea, reduction in milk production, and other animal products. Domestic animals are especially good hosts for them. Their presence can be determined by the cysts and oocysts that are found, as they are the hard shells that protect parasites at the young ages of their life cycle. This research was conducted due to the increase in disease cases and production losses that were present in farm livestock of other areas. The potential presence of these parasites in Canadian farm livestock will help to determine future action. To determine the presence of these parasites in the different farm animals, they collected fecal samples from different animals in different areas. This includes farms, research stations, and agricultural colleges. They then analyzed the stool consistency, overall health of the animal, medication the animals were taking, and their sources of water. They then mixed the feces samples with phosphate buffered saline and then added a sucrose solution to allow the parasites to grow and develop. They then centrifuged these tubes to collect particulate matter, cysts, and oocysts. From this, they determined the percentage of each parasite present. Both Giardia and Cryptosporidium were identified in cattle at all study locations. The overall presence was 29% for Giardia and 20% for Cryptosporidium. Giardia and Cryptosporidium were demonstrated in sheep from all 6 study locations as well. The overall presence of Giardia was 38%, while Cryptosporidium was identified in 23%. In pigs, Giardia was found in 4 out of the 6 farms, and Cryptosporidium was found in 3 out of the 5 farms. The overall presence was 9% for Giardia and 11% for Cryptosporidium. For horses, Giardia was demonstrated in all locations, while Cryptosporidium was only present in 3 out of the 4. Their relative presences being 20% and 17%. They also determined the presences of these parasites in animals of different ages. These results are seen in Table 2. This data supports the hypothesis and prediction as they determined the actual presence of the parasites in the animals. Different animals had different prevalences for the parasites. As for cattle, there is 29% for Giardia and 20% for Cryptosporidium, but for sheep, 38% tested positive for Giardia and 23% tested positive for Cryptosporidium. This data can then be interpreted to show that these parasites are present in Canadian farm animals, as the overall prevalence of Giardia was 38% and the overall prevalence of Cryptosporidium was 23%. They concluded for cattle that the overall prevalence was 29% for Giardia and 20% for Cryptosporidium, and sheep it was 38% and 23% respectively. For pigs it was 9% Giardia and 11% Cryptosporidium, and for horses Giardia was demonstrated in all study locations and Cryptosporidium in 3/4 of them. This data then implies that because both of the parasites were present in the locations, it is clear that they are prevalent in Canadian livestock. This is important because these parasites can cause undesirable side effects such as diarrhea and negatively influence growth. It can also infect humans. The presence of these pathogens matches the presence and absence of bird sounds seen in Amelia's research.
The article I selected is Associations with Bird Sounds. How do they relate to perceived restoration potential by Radcliffe, Gaterson, Blint, and Sowden. As Ellen stated in her selected article about the presence and absence of pathogens matches my article, where the presence of bird sounds helps stress and restoration levels. The casual question in my article was how bird sounds help stress recovery and attention restoration. The hypothesis is birds with a higher perceived restoration potential will have a positive effect on stress and attention levels. The prediction of the article are bird sounds rated with a higher perceived restoration potential are going to be related with spring and summer seasons, daytime, and active environments, whereas low ratings of perceived restoration potential are going to be related with negative behavior, non-avian animals, nighttime, the winter season, and marine environments. Background information for this study was the bird species were from the United Kingdom and Australia. The research objective was to find which perceived restoration potential has a better effect on stress and attention levels. In this study, 174 adults volunteered to listen to the bird sounds. The participants then randomly placed into 5 different groups of 30 to 39 members. In the groups, the participants listened to 10 bird sounds. 5 had to be birds from the United Kingdom and 5 from Australia. There was a total of 50 bird sounds listened to in this experiment. The participants listened to the birds on a computer and then rated the bird sounds into different categories, the categories being the environment, animals, time and season, and activities in the environment. To determine if bird sounds have associations with memories, participants answered questions about memories related to the sound of the bird. The data was analyzed through a thematic analysis to determine the different themes related to the bird sound. Each bird sound was categorized using the different themes and perceived restoration potential scores. The results of the experiment were bird sounds with a higher perceived restoration potential are associated with summer and spring, the daytime, and green environments. And the birds with low perceived restoration potential are associated with marine environments. The higher perceived restoration potential bird sounds related to well-known environments like gardens and backyards. The result was that birds with high perceived restoration potential rates positively affect stress recovery and attention restoration because the sounds connect the people to good memories. The data supports the hypothesis because the high perceived restoration potential did have a positive effect on the attention restoration and stress recovery. In interpreting the data, the higher perceived restoration potential sounds associated with positive categories such as the daytime, the spring, the summer seasons, and the low perceived restoration potential is associated with negative categories such as the night. The results show the significance that listening to birds can connect people to different environments and activities. Implications for this study can be that determined from the results of the bird sounds with a high perceived restoration potential rating include that attention restoration is associated with memories, perceptual and somatic properties, and links people to environments. Another implication in this study is the perceived restoration potential of specific bird sounds may be related not only to intrinsic properties of sounds themselves, but also associated to the links of sounds ranging from the individual animals to imagined environments of the past.